So this new irrigation ban is in addition to the current water restrictions that are already in place, such as district-specific watering windows that are typically between 6 p.m. and 9 a.m. Watering is limited to 2 days a week or less. Irrigation water runoff is prohibited. Irrigating 48 hours after a storm event is also prohibited. However, we do understand that this new regulation has created some confusion. So let's dive into this a bit further. What is functional turf? Functional turf are areas where kids can play or community events are held. Also included are sports fields and golf courses. Non-functional turf is defined as turf that is located in small strips such as parking lots, large green belts, small areas between streets, parking lot planters, and other areas where turf is located, but people are not using it. So what do you do now? Well, if you find that you have these areas that are defined as non-functional turf, you're now prohibited from watering those areas. If you're not sure if your area is considered functional turf, you can contact your local water agency like Roy or Neil for clarification. But this is really a great time to convert those areas of non-functional turf to low water use plants and gardens. Taking advantage of your local water district's rebates that I have listed here. This is just typical rebates. You have to contact your district specifically for those. But there could be state rebates as well for turf removal, drip irrigation conversions, and more to help offset the price on those. We know there is a lot of attention to this non-functional turf ban. However, the overall goal is to reduce water waste as a whole. And typically the most water waste happens due to neglected irrigation systems and poor controller management. This includes turf areas, but also can include shrubs and turf and planter beds. Here are a few items that should be checked frequently in regards to your irrigation system. Checking for those leaks and breaks. Typically, a broken sprinkler can waste 4,000 to 8,000 gallons of water in just a few minutes. Looking for overspray and runoff. We have pictures here of those overspray and runoff. Looking for plugged emitters and nozzles. Repairing damaged equipment, such as like this broken controller that's on the wall, and sensors. And checking operating pressure. Too much pressure, like the picture with the ivy, you can see there's a lot of water waste misting into the air, but too little pressure, you don't have adequate coverage of your landscape. Weather-based controller programming is also another thing to be checked out. Weather-based scheduling allows you to save water as you schedule the irrigation based on evapotranspiration, or it's the amount of water that's lost due to sunlight. There's more water lost in June, believe it or not, because the days are longer than in September when we have our warmest days. Here with the slide that you can see now, most people turn on their water for their irrigation system in March and just turn it full blast all through the summer and then off in the fall. Weather-based scheduling, you can see, saves all that overwatering section. Currently, the trends in irrigation are utilizing technology, especially the smart and Wi-Fi enabled controllers. This gives you the ability to manage your irrigation from your phone or your computer. It also has the ability to shut off the irrigation when rain is detected. Water efficient landscapes are a huge trend, and now you can utilize those rebates that the districts are offering to help offset the costs. Roy, we have you here with Stokel Creek to tell us a little bit about what you're doing, what your district is doing to manage the regulation. Feel free to go ahead.
Okay, thanks, Katie, and thanks, Shane. So we sent letters out to all of our commercial HOA and institutional customers about 3 weeks ago. And since then, we've had a steady stream of inquiries about what conforms to the rules and what doesn't. And so to kind of help people along with the process, we included details on how to submit the information that we need in order to properly enforce the regulation. So we're just asking for a picture of the area, some square footages, and just a brief description of what it's used for and how often it's used for. And then we review that information and file it and act accordingly if and when we need to. It's informational at this point. We don't anticipate coming out of the gate really hard and fining people. The consequences of it are in the state water code. You can levy a monetary fine. Just for informational purposes, it's $100 for each occurrence. So it could be quite substantial if it's a really egregious case of somebody flouting an obvious condition where it's like a bank or a slope in front of a commercial building that never gets used. That would kind of be something that would be enforced. So we are rolling it out and informing our customers. And the State Water Resources Control Board, they passed this law just because there wasn't very much in the way of compliance. So it is kind of a hard way, easy way dynamic that's occurring at the state level, is what it feels like. And so I'd be interested to see what the carrots are going to be now that this stick has been, pulled out. And at the same time, it's been passed as an emergency regulation. And so there could be a sunset, but that remains to be seen. So for the Soquel Creek Water District specifically, since we are dealing with a long-term groundwater deficit and our supplemental supply project is still a couple of years out, we are taking this seriously, and we're using a pretty good informational process and outreach process to kind of get everybody aware. And June 10th was the date that we requested that the non-functional turf stop being irrigated. And then June 30th is the date that we would like to have most of the exemption requests in. So that's in 2 more days. And I imagine a few more will come in, but we've got a pretty good chunk of work to do, just getting all that sorted out. And we do have a rebate, and we've already gotten a pretty good amount of people on board with it. It's $2 a square foot for commercial properties, maxing out at 5,000 square feet for a dollar value of $10,000 maximum. We have a spray to drip irrigation rebate that can be used concurrently with this. Mind you, it's not for the turf areas, it's only for shrub areas. There are 2 distinct rebates, but if an applicant has shrubs that are watered with overhead sprays and they want to get that on drip, we have a rebate for that. Those are the 2 rebates right now that are probably the most pertinent for, kind of managing what's going on with the turf makeover. So that's kind of the broad-based perspective of what we're doing right now. And I'll pass it over to Neil, and maybe he can get everybody up to date on Santa Cruz's programs.
Awesome, Roy. Really appreciate that. And I'm guessing all of that information that you just told us about can also be found on your website. Is that correct?
SoquelCreekWater.org. And you can always give me a call. I can be found very easily at the district. I don't have my information to put up on the screen right now, but yeah, it's not hard to reach us.
Awesome. No, you guys have been great. We contacted you and worked very closely with a couple of projects that our clients have. And it's been really great to submit the information to, explain why we feel it's functional turf, and getting those exemptions where it is plausible and where it's possible has been great to work with you guys on that. So I really appreciate that information. SoquelCreekWater.org is where you can go for that. And with that said, we will get an update from Neil and hear from what they're doing over in Santa Cruz. How's it going, Neil?
Fantastic. Hey, thank you guys. Shane, Katie, thanks for the opportunity. Roy, thanks for passing it over there, and for everybody who's participating this evening. I do have a brief slide deck, Katie, if you want to share.
I can
screens
stop
there.
here. And you should be able to share your screen.
Fantastic. All right. Katie, how's that look?
That looks great. Thank you.
Okay, guys. My name is Neil Kristen. I'm from the City of Santa Cruz Water Department. I do work in the water conservation section. This year for our restrictions, this does apply to all our customers. Oh, excuse me. I'm going to start over here. Got something important for you. This is one of the main questions that has been asked this summer so far. Who does this apply to in our service area? And we want to be able to give people just a general representation of just the width and scope of our service area. We're the largest service area in the county. We do go out to about 41st proper. We do include small portion of the city of Capitola. We have a large section of the non-incorporated part of the county. And as you can see, we cover a vast area. So we ask all of our customers to try to locate themselves. We realize that there's some property management companies that operate cross boundaries. And so that makes it a little complicated to discern what's applicable and what is not. Our restrictions are a little different than Soquel Creek, which is our neighboring utility. And really this year, we've been asked to apply a limited scope of the restrictions. They're very similar. Of course, we're always focused on prohibiting any sort of water waste as a result of irrigation practices. So we're really going to hammer down on that this summer. That's going to be the spear of our point of focus. We are only allowing watering 2 days a week. Important detail is we are not prescriptive in telling people what days of the week those are. We're leaving that up to the customer to determine across all customer classes what 2 days a week will work for them and their systems. And then we are also asking that there was no irrigation between the hours of 10 a.m. and 6 p.m. We do have some minor exceptions. I won't even go into those right now, but in general, that's just a basic efficiency measure. So short of an emergency, we really want to make sure that people are irrigating during the prime times and not the peak hours of the day. And no irrigation of non-essential turf. And of course, this has been a topic of much contention this summer. Katie, thank you for your description of that. We also have, our own definition, and we try to simplify it. And we're just calling that decorative ornamental turf of any kind that doesn't serve a functional purpose where people could actually utilize that area. And again, we're not being prescriptive this year as far as requiring people to provide justification or photo documentation of those areas. We're leaving it up to the account holder to determine in conjunction with their residents and landscape service providers what areas are determined to be non-functional turf. And in general, just in discussion with some property managers and HOA board members, we've really kind of whittled that down to, obviously if it doesn't serve any function and it may likely be on a street side strip, it might be a smaller area that's included in part of a larger landscape that's only serving an ornamental purpose. It's really easy to define that. We realize that it is somewhat subjective depending on who you ask, what's functional and not functional. But again, we're leaving that up to the account holder at this point to determine the designation of those areas. Our drought objectives of this year, again, our approach is going to be to ask for voluntary savings in the outdoor sector. Our hope is that if we could achieve some savings this year, it'll mitigate the need to move into more extreme measures for the following year. If we should have a suboptimal winter, it'll put us in a supply situation that's quite a bit different than this year. And so we want to really emphasize that to our customer base, that even though it is voluntary, these tangible savings that may be achieved through these measures this summer could really have an impact on whether we end up in a stage 1 next year or a stage 2, depending on what may happen climatically for our area. We also want to comply with the governor's executive order. Again, that was a limited set of requirements for us here in the city of Santa Cruz, but ultimately we still do need to comply. And we do have limited staff resources this summer. We don't have the normal drought response staff of about 5 employees in our office. It's just going to be 2 of us this summer. And so we're going to focus on really implementing enforcement of the outdoor waterways prohibition. That's something that, we deem is just, completely inappropriate given what's going on in the state and locally. And that's just been a trend for us here, over the last 20 years or so. So I think for the most part, our customers understand that. But really the conversation now is talking about what that means in implementation for you, the account holders, especially the larger landscapes that are maintained throughout the area. And, irrigation management and what is that, and breaking down some of the barriers to allowing customers to really move to a more progressive mode of irrigation management. You in the industry at K&D, you folks could probably attest to the fact that it's just it's a generalized assumption that if someone has a contract with a service provider, that service provider is out doing physical checks of the irrigation system and making sure that stuff like this doesn't happen. But we know just through practice that there's usually a breakdown in communication there, and there's some assumptions made that aren't necessarily accurate. But this is often what we see on the enforcement side in our area during the summer months is, it's just, it's inadvertent, but it's malfunctioning equipment that's resulting in some pretty serious water waste throughout our system. Non-functional turf. Again, this is something that we're trying to minimize this year. We're going to take this opportunity to really put some pressure on our commercial account holders in the area that still maintain, limited but areas of non-functional turf like this that just don't really serve a functional purpose. To me, this is not subjective. This is very objective, and it's clearly produces water waste just based on the configuration, the shape, the slope, you name it. So we're going to take that opportunity to really collaborate with our customers. We do provide a rebate. That rebate is a higher total value for our commercial customers and multifamily, total up to 5,000 square feet at $1 per square foot. So we want to try to help people with that financial incentive. But I think ultimately the conversation really, when you look historically over the last 10 years, how many years have we been in some form of water shortage where we had to implement water restrictions and make recommendations? This seems like it's going to be, more of a norm for us moving forward. I think we could all agree on that. And so how does that affect the business on the business side? And so we could make some valid arguments there as far as why it may be beneficial to change out these areas. Some of the common questions we've been getting so far, we implemented our requirements on the 3rd of June. It's again, what the topic of discussion here, what is the determination or the mode of determination of non-functional turf? And for us, it's a little different. But again, it's not serving a recreational function where people could use it. If it's ornamental, decorative in nature, we're going to call that non-functional turf. And for application of enforcement, again, we're leaving that up to the account holder to make that determination. And what, for the non-functional turf, who does that apply to? Does that apply to all customers in our service area? It does not. It is only for commercial customers, industrial customers, and multifamily customers, which translates to HOAs and apartment complexes. What 2 days can I water? So there's been quite a bit of discussion about that. It seems like our surrounding, more often than not, some of our surrounding water districts and utilities are prescribing days for watering. We are not. We're leaving it up to the customer to decide what 2 days are best for them and their situation. And how long will the restrictions last? We don't know. This is not coming from us locally. We're implementing a requirement passed down from the state. It really depends on what happens, as we end summer and what the forecast is going to be going into the water year. And so this is something that could supersede the emergency status, declaration status as we know it right now. Recommendations on my behalf, just from experience, it's for the people participating today, communicate with your landscape service providers to discuss the applications of the applicable restrictions. We realize that it's going to be a little bit different from jurisdiction to jurisdiction, so it's really important to get those details ironed out. And especially for the service providers, it helps them really align how they're managing. One, you might have 2 properties just on either side of the service area boundary, and it's going to be a little bit different in how they apply those restrictions for you, and make sure you're successful doing that. And water efficiency in the landscape saves money. And at this point, with our rates going the direction they're going, it's a non-starter now to really talk about the dollar savings from moving to a more efficient way of managing your landscapes. And so we're here to help. We can make recommendations for customers if they feel like they have some area for improvement. Please feel free to reach out and give us a call or hit us at email. And consider lawn conversion options for the non-functional turf areas. Again, that's something that's only been gaining momentum probably over the last 10 years. And we're really hoping that we could facilitate the conversion of some of these last remaining areas that have just been problematic over the years, not just from a waterway standpoint, but just the efficiency consideration. And again, if we're understanding that nowadays in our service area, water costs real money for people. And so if we want to get that cost savings up and your efficiency level, we're here to help. So feel free to reach out.
Awesome, Neil.
Thank you. Here's some contact information for you folks. I'm assuming this will be recorded. So if folks want to access this after the presentation, feel free to reach out. Thanks again for your time.
Yeah, thank you. We will be sending this recording out. I missed the first couple minutes. I'm sorry about that, but it has all the good stuff here. So we got the contact info for Neil, City of Santa Cruz, and Soquel Creek. That's a really easy one too, soquelcreekwater.org, and you will be able to find that on there. The other thing I wanted to mention is we do have a question that came through, and I think this is specifically towards the City of Santa Cruz, Neil, so maybe you could take this one. The question is, if lawn in an HOA is used for picnics, hanging out, kids playing, it sounds like we could determine it as essential turf, correct?
Correct.
Awesome. So for the City of Santa Cruz, would they need to submit pictures or send that over to you, or just go ahead and keep irrigating it? And
correct. We are indeed leaving that up to the account holder to make that determination in conjunction with their residents, board members, and landscape service providers. To make sure that you have a cohesive decision on that requirement for all the stakeholders.
That's awesome. Yeah, and I think there's a lot of small strips of lawn, near the street or near the roads, right between the houses. That could be thought as non-functional. But if you got a nice big area where it's kind of in the middle of the complex that everyone likes to gather and the kids do play on it and run around, that makes a lot of sense to keep it. Maybe looking at those smaller perimeter areas where people don't really play, that may be an area where you want to convert and maybe cut that irrigation back and really do your part to help conserve the water as we are in this extreme situation here.
Right. We're really hoping that people, our customers, will adhere to the honor system on this. I think one of the benefits from the state legislation is we do we've updated our Muni code to align with the enforcement mechanism of the state. And so we do have the ability to levy those financial penalties outside of being in a declared stage of water shortage, which we are not currently in the City of Santa Cruz, but we still have that tool. I hope it doesn't come to that, but likely we will be focusing on those very obvious areas that are less subjective when it comes to making the determination whether it's functional or not.
Awesome. And as far as your rebates go, do you know those or want to give a brief rundown of those, or is it best?
Yeah, it's been the same since 2018. It's $1 per square foot for lawn conversion, up to 1,000 square feet for residential properties, and 5,000 square feet for commercial and multifamily. And again, those have been really popular. I think people have really just been coming to the understanding that large areas of turf are just no longer viable to maintain in our service area. And we do promote, the downsizing of turf to more functional areas where people could really enjoy and recreate. We understand the benefit there, but to the extent where it's used in an ornamental fashion and a widespread use throughout a large property, it's problematic.
Yeah. Awesome. Great. And we do have another person here, Michael Johnson with Watsonville, and he was a last minute ad, but we do want to give him a couple minutes just to give us an update from what the Watsonville Water District is doing and his view and perspective on this. Michael's been part of this industry and involved in the Water Conservation Act for a long time now, and is very dedicated to the cause and has a lot of passion behind saving water. And we've been working closely with him for many years now. And Michael, if you want to give us a little brief update of what your district is doing and what you're seeing and what's happening in the world right now with this whole act.
Yes, thank you, Shane. Thanks, Neil and Roy and Katie. Good to see all of you folks. Lots of familiar faces. And I appreciate the updates from Roy and Neil, especially considering I'm a customer of Neil's. So. Hey, and I just want to point out too, I just saw a question from somebody about drip irrigation. And I don't know if it was for Roy or Neil or maybe all of us, but that's a really good question that we need to discuss. I see Roy's hand is up now.
I have a distinction to make. Because of Soquel Creek Water's urban water management plan, we do not have a day of the week restriction. So sorry to complicate things further, but you can water more than twice a week in the Soquel Creek Water District. Of course, I always caveat that with no runoff, appropriate time of day. We do have a time of day restriction that's between 10 a.m. and 6 p.m. So I can only answer, for us, but yes, you can drip irrigate or spray irrigate accordingly to your schedule without any day of the week restriction.
We have some alignment. Thank you, Roy. We,
That's
we, as well as mentioned, we do not have the day of the week defined. Customers are allowed to elect what 2 days of the week are best for their system and their situation. For drip, in all honesty, we're not going to, unless you're wasting water egregiously between the hours of 10 and 6, we're not going to know if you're going to be running that system. So that's a really hard issue to enforce. That being said, drip irrigation can irrigate between the hours of 10 and 6. We don't recommend that. We do, again, ask for people to voluntarily and holistically comply with our restrictions. If it becomes a case where it's that egregious, we're likely going to be dealing with a water waste restriction violation, and not as much concerned about the 10 to 6 irrigation.
Right. So the question was, are drip systems regulated to 2 days of watering per week? And it sounds
Yes.
like with
Yes.
Soquel Creek, you can water, it doesn't matter, they don't have the 2-day restriction. With City of Santa Cruz, sounds like, they would like you to stick to that 2-day a week. And honestly, shrubs around here don't need a lot more than that.
Mhm.
But you can water them infrequently to make them happy and healthy. So I think that's the question, and my best interpretation of the answers there. And Michael, I'll let you kind of finish up that one and kind of go with your side.
Well, yeah, I mean, how are you going to enforce that? So it's like, yes, what they said is true, but at the end of the day, I think it's really, we're all looking at the egregious stuff at this point, and strongly encouraging, whether through financial means or otherwise, all the water customers to reduce their overall water use outdoors. City of Watsonville went to a stage 2 water shortage per the state's mandate, and that changes a few things. In Watsonville, we're claiming to have specific days to water, but really practically nobody's going to be able to keep up with that. I'm just reading off of a piece of paper that I got last week. It says addresses with odd numbers may water on Wednesdays and Saturdays for a maximum of 15 minutes. Addresses with even numbers may water on Thursdays and Sundays for a maximum of 15 minutes. Well, there's all kinds of problems with that. I don't know who is going to be monitoring the days of the week necessarily. And the 15 minutes, well, that's a rough one, because what's your soil type, what's your precipitation rate? So, and again, who's going to be looking? I mean, we could, but we don't have time to look remotely at all these accounts. We have the ability to look at meters and know exactly when they're running and how long they're running, but we're really focusing on the higher water users. So we always track our top 100 highest water users with outdoor or with irrigation accounts each year. We're looking for that overspray and that runoff, which is still happening. We just in the last couple of days have sent out a couple of notices where with financial penalties already being imposed, because these are ongoing chronic water waste issues we've had for years. In a couple of cases over a decade. So the city of Watsonville will double water rates when there's ongoing water waste, when it's not addressed. That's in the municipal code, and the iterations of the fines are in the municipal code. It's $100, then $200, then $500 for each occurrence. So it can really add up. But I can tell you, I can count on both of my hands. So we've got around 10 or 12 accounts where we've already started that, or it will happen. Most accounts, we always work with the water customers. It's about education. It's about helping them reduce their outdoor water use. And you guys who know me, you know my mantra by now. We want healthy and beautiful landscapes that are resource efficient. It's easy. So we have a rebate program in the city of Watsonville. We tried to make it easy. There's a menu of things you can choose from. It's all $1 per square foot, up to $1,000 for single family residential homes, and up to $2,000 for multi-residential and commercial, because we don't have those deep pockets that Roy and Neil have. But it's helpful. It's something, and people appreciate it. And I appreciate K&D especially for working with us many times over the years to help your clients get some of that rebate money back. Let's see, what else did I want to say? Yeah, sorry, I kind of came in at the last minute, and maybe that was it. We've got the rebate program, the same water restrictions that everybody else has, and the same ones that we've had for 20 years. Frankly, you can't have water leaving the properties, hitting non-targeted areas. Oh, I know the other thing that I want people to know is that we're also working with the Parks Department. So we're doing irrigation system evaluations this summer at all of the parks properties, so that the city of Watsonville can also be in alignment and lead the way, set the good example. And it's challenging because there's lots of grass there. So we're having to decide what areas are we not going to irrigate, because the parks and the city feel strongly about also reducing their water use. Some areas aren't going to look great. But what we're focusing on, and this kind of touches on what you were talking about, Shane, where we do have areas, lots of turf areas that are functional and serve a good purpose in the community. But those edges are so hard. You know, you can't line up your arcs to not spray on the sidewalk or the street. So we're kind of shutting down the edges, and we're going to see brown and yellow edges at some of the properties, so that we can use the water in the areas that are used the most, and that we want to keep alive and keep healthy. And a lot of, especially with these cool season turf grasses, they're going to green up again when it rains. And let's face it, most lawns are half or more weeds anyway, so those weeds are going to come back when it rains or when they get some water. And then there's some rethinking about, well, what do you do with the edges long term? Maybe you mulch them. But that's kind of where we're going for now. So it's going to be browner and yellower in Watsonville, and we're going to continue with the city properties to also set those examples, do more re-landscaping so that people can have landscapes to model themselves after, or to admire in the community.
Awesome. Great, Michael. We really appreciate that perspective from the Watsonville area, and I think we're all in this together, and it's great to have you guys here representing and just being a part of this educational process that we are really trying to help be a part of and facilitate for everybody. And we have a couple more questions that came in. One of them, back to you, Neil, was a question about, will the city of Santa Cruz consider adding a rebate for conversion of spray to drip for shrubs like Soquel Creek has?
Yeah, I could take that. Thanks, Shane. We will not be entertaining that type of program, unfortunately. As much as I'd like to, there's been much discussion for us at the executive level on where our programs are going, and unfortunately, they're going to be whittled away. And so I think the message now is to encourage people to participate in the rebate programs. For us, in our customers in the city of Santa Cruz, it starts with just receiving approval of eligibility. Once you receive that approval of eligibility, you have that for 1 year. And so I do recommend doing that. If it's something you think you might be interested in, even if you don't want to commit yet, establish that eligibility. It shows that people are still interested in the program, and provide some incentive to our executive team to keep sponsoring at least the lawn removal rebate program. And then I think we also have another question from Kelly in regard to a deadline for submitting exemption for essential turf areas. And again, we are not requiring any sort of submission of areas that will be exempt from the requirement. We're leaving that up to the customer to determine what areas are considered to be functional and will remain being irrigated at an efficient level throughout the summer.
Awesome. And then just a couple of general questions that have been kind of floating around, at least in my mind and in our office. But kind of, and I think you slightly touched on it, Michael, but when are the fines going to start? What are those going to look like? And, you know, when should customers expect to start getting fines for not complying with this? Roy, I'll pass it over to you first. Let's go Roy, Neil, and then Michael on that. I think Michael kind of already touched on it, but we'll let him answer that specifically.
Yeah, our posture is to just be communication and outreach right now, and kind of piggybacking on what Michael said. There will be brown areas. It's not going to go from just green lush turf to beautiful drought tolerant landscapes. So we have step signs that you can get for the HOA people listening in. They say doing our part to save water. We have had calls from concerned property owners saying and landscapers, the grass is going brown. We're not mismanaging the site. Do you have any signage? So we'd like to support it that way rather than just right off the gate, just writing up fines. It's onerous. It creates bad will. There's a lot of bad reasons to do that. And so that's the way we're approaching it. However, if it's egregious and just really flouting the rule, then yes, we will. And we're ready to. We have the code citation, the same thing that Neil has in Santa Cruz, and what the city of Watsonville has. So it's an outreach program. We don't have a firm timeline on when we might fine, but we could do it tomorrow if it's a really egregious case. So I hope that answers the question.
Awesome. Neil, go ahead. I think you're on mute right now, but
Great question, Shane. Again, same long history of having an educational approach to our enforcement program. For better or worse, we want to make sure that people have a positive experience from our interaction. We do have the ability to levy those fines immediately. That's definitely not going to be our first resort. That'll likely be our last resort. As long as we're in communication with customers, service providers, and just bringing awareness to a potential issue and receive confirmation of resolution in a timely fashion. That's really what we're looking for. It's the most time-intensive approach, but it's our preferred approach. If we have a customer that's just non-compliant, non-responsive to our outreach efforts, then ultimately we have that ability to levy the fine, and we will.
Awesome. Great response, Neil. Michael, you want to add anything on to what you said previously?
Same for City of Watsonville. I think we all have kind of the same policy. We want to help, but we will fine if necessary. So typically there's an initial letter, then there's a follow-up if we don't get a response or there's no change, and then there's a third letter, and then penalties start adding up. So it'll take the course of a couple of months, and with the vast majority of the cases.
Awesome. Sounds like across the board, it's communication, work with the client to resolve the issue. And if they're still not complying and not taking action, then fines will probably be coming down the road.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, makes sense. I mean, I think that's a great approach, very fair, and is really very nice of you all to give us that leeway and to work with everybody. Another great question that has been thrown around, at least in our office, as I mentioned, is no-mow grass. So the drought tolerant, long no-mow grass, is that considered non-functional turf, or where do you guys see that falling into this ban?
Yeah,
That is not functional. I'll just say, it's considered turf is turf under the regulation, and we don't go into species. It's just, short and sweet answer is it is considered non-functional under our interpretation.
Okay.
You're really getting into the wide gray area of these restrictions. We've always treated, again, unfortunately, no-mow grass as a non-functional turf. It's typically used in an ornamental fashion. We're seeing it used more now in, I guess, an attempt to have it be more of a recreational function, but we usually see that it's planted in a certain way, and then it becomes maintained as a typical turf. And so it becomes high water use at that point. When you start mowing it, it needs more water, you're watering it more, and it just, it deviates quite a bit from its intention when it was installed.
Right. Mike, would you tend to agree with that approach?
Yes, and you're going to have some clients in some situations where they will insist upon you keeping that alive. So, you know, again, I think you can get away with irrigating things as long as there's not water hitting non-targeted areas, right?
Right.
So water it minimally, water it like a low water use species instead of a moderate or higher water use species. So it's not going to look its greatest, but you're going to keep it alive.
Right.
This is all unofficial advice, by the way.
Yes, yes. And I will add on top of that as a disclosure, this is all perspective and opinions from K&D Landscaping and Water Management, as well as each of the individuals here from the water agencies. This is not legal advice. This is our interpretation and our perspective of what's going on right now, and our effort to provide everyone with as much education around this as possible. And it looks like that's pretty much the last question that I see. You know, one other. Go ahead.
Yeah, maybe the question I saw earlier roll through was, do you have a copy of the law? We actually have a frequently asked questions sheet and a summary of the resolution from the State Water Resources Control Board. So it's in a PDF, and happy to mail that out to any and all people. Doesn't matter if you're a customer or not. Be glad to provide that.
Yeah, we will send this recording out to everyone that is on here. I believe we have that technology, and we may be able to include the PDF of that too from the state directly, so everyone can see it. As we've talked about today, there is some gray areas in there, and that's really what we're trying to do, is help people navigate through those. And nobody really has any specific answers that are concrete. It's all how we interpret this, just like any other legislation that the state brings out and introduces. There's a lot of nuances to that. And as time goes on, we will work through those. One other question that I do get asked frequently and see come up is when people that are really trying to make an effort to be conscious of their water usage and are doing their part, and then they drive down the street and they see their, you know, great neighbor down there or other business or shopping center, whatever it may be, completely wasting water. I mean, what should those people do? And you know, who do they contact, or what action should they take, if any, if they see significant water waste that is not their property?
Yeah, we heavily rely on our customer base and community members to report, you know, issues of perceived water waste. Of course, not everything we field is definitively water waste. Much of what we do is really just communicate with people about the difference between defined water waste and a perceived misuse of water. The misuse of water being subjective. Some people would consider washing a car a misuse of water or water waste, and we get that. But you know, people also have the discretion to use water the way that they see fit, as long as it's in an efficient manner. So we get through our general email, conservation@cityofsantacruz.com. We also have a leak line, which is 420-LEAK. We field quite a few reports from there, and then we of course just get calls in as well, so to our direct line. So we do rely on people calling stuff in if they see it in our service area, and if it's outside of our service area, we'll typically pass those on to the appropriate jurisdiction.
Awesome, great response, Neil. Roy, how do you guys handle that in your district?
Yeah, we handle it the same way. We have our reporting process and we have a notification process. We do request that when people do send in information, that it's documented with a photo, and then we act on it. And we do see that there can be really good results from this. I was just kind of looking at cases that came through recently, and it just tells me that 90% of them are just there's just not the kind of oversight that there should be. Sometimes people don't even know what's happening. So that kind of just to kind of expound on what Neil was speaking about with regards to the regulation, and when people see regulations right away, you know, you get kind of like, there's a cop on your rear view with his red lights on. And you got to look at what the intent of this is. And while I have the ears here, and I know I'm speaking to the chorus on some of us, but you know, the intent is because we're in a really historically arid period. I was at a conference a few weeks ago up in Sacramento, and the head of the DWR gave a very sobering keynote address that this, you know, kind of speaks to, is this a temporary regulation? Well, it might not be. We don't know. Tomorrow could be a banner year for water, but we don't know. But the trend is that it's going drier. And so we don't need to get full buy-in. We just want to have people, if you're managing a site, throttle down some heads, cap them off. It doesn't have to be to the square centimeter. There will be brown lawns. And so as far as the whole philosophy of enforcement goes, it's just to get those little those cattle that won't kind of round up. You know, most people want to do the right thing. It's the egregious ones that we do fine, and we will, and we have legal authority to do it. Now, we didn't have that 6 months ago. We had to rewrite our code as well so that we could administratively levy the fine. It used to be that you had to have a cop write a ticket. It had to be an infraction, a misdemeanor. That's no longer the case. And so that's freed us to administer a fine.
Awesome. Awesome. Michael, I know I've contacted you many times about things I've seen in Watsonville, and you yourself and your team has really taken action on that. Is that still the best thing to do, is to contact the office? And
Yep, so you can call customer service. Watsonville also has a link on their website under the business and residential water conservation resources to report water waste. Photo documentation is very helpful as well. Yeah, I really appreciate it when you or another contractor reaches out to us, because you guys are out there a lot. We have very little time and resources to actually go out and look for this stuff on a regular basis. So it's helpful when we get reports as well. And again, the intention is just to help the water customer. Like Roy said, oftentimes people don't even realize it's happening.
yeah, so true. Well, we are out of time today. I appreciate everybody coming and joining us. You know, we do plan on holding more of these in the future. We're talking about holding one every month for the rest of the year, just to keep everybody up to date and up to speed on things. And, you know, I think our water agency friends have told it the best. You know, most people want to do the right thing and want to do their best. So we all need to help spread the word. Let's let everybody that we talk to and that we know in our circle, let's let them know what's going on. Maybe send them our next Zoom link when we send that out. You know, let's try to get more people educated so that we can continue to spread the word and get everybody on the same page of what's really going on and how serious this is. We all love the state that we live in. And unfortunately, if we don't do our part to conserve the water, it's not going to look as beautiful as it does today. And every year it becomes more difficult and more difficult to maintain and keep our landscapes thriving and our parks and our communities having water, because it will at some point get to that level where we will have to pick and choose what parks, what baseball fields, what soccer fields we have to keep. And we don't want it to get to that. I know everybody on this call does not want it to get to that, but I just really encourage everyone to go tell 5, 10 people they know about this today and the next one that's coming up, and just how important water conservation is. So once again, thank you all for coming. We will send this recording out, and I hope everybody has a great Tuesday evening.
All right.
Thanks.
Guys.
Bye,
Hey,
everybody.
Thank
thanks for
you.
the opportunity.
Thank you.